Okay, Rubicon's basement again. I'm standing around here trying to look at different things for you guys to be able to look at. I was looking at different things to bring to the table so you guys could look at it while I ramble. And one of the things I really wanted to, and I gave up because I only have so much time, so I apologize to everybody. But I was thinking about Warhammer when I was playing my Orcs and Goblins army. I was thinking about all the different phases of the game. And one of the things that struck me, specifically with the Orc and Goblin army, is how you can affect the battlefield in so many different ways. And that got me thinking about a friend of mine. And this friend of mine, he's always entering these basketball tournaments. And everybody would go for, well, I'm going to pick, when they had the draft, everyone would say, well, I'm going to go for this guy because he gets so many rebounds. And I'm going to draft this guy because he scores so many points. And I'm going to draft this guy because he gets so many steals, or whatever the categories are. They would always pick people who were the best in that one category. Now, my friend, he picked guys that got him points in every category. So he would always get the picks because nobody wanted them. He would get guys that maybe get some points, but he'd also get some rebounds, he'd also get some steals, he'd also get some assists. But he had a whole team of guys that got him something in every single category. When you add all those up, sometimes those guys are supposed to get you all those points, they have a bad game, and then you're bust on points. So he plays that way, and it struck me when I was putting together the Orc and Goblin list that I had, is not that I'm the best general and that this is new, but this is something that I haven't ever heard anybody talk about with respect to Warhammer, is specifically being active in every single phase of the game. Not saying it's going to guarantee a win, but right away, beginning with when you first deploy and movement, you can affect the battlefield right away. So if you got scouts, I'm thinking maybe you should have them in your army, because right away you got them on your opponent's side. They can be a pain in the ass. They might die right away, whatever the case may be, but you're affecting the battlefield before you even begin the game. And also anything that can vanguard. If you've got stuff that can vanguard, again, you can move and do stuff when your opponent can't. So if you got scouts and you got things that can vanguard, you're effectively playing before the game even begins, and you have an opportunity to engage the game right away. So if your opponent doesn't have those things, then he's not playing and you are, and that's pretty cool. And even with movement, despite having scouts and things that vanguard, you also have compulsory. And if you have things that can move in the compulsory phase of the movement phase, you got movement, you got marching, you got charging, you got all that kind of stuff, which all armies can do. But then also, if you have things that can move out of the normal sequence of turn, you're affecting the battle. You're playing when your opponent isn't. And I always just see that as a plus. So, for example, like the Hell Pit, I believe, has a random movement. You pivot it, you turn, you roll the dice, that's how far you go. But specifically with the steam tanks and the pump wagons and the manglers in the Orc and Goblin army, those are huge because you can't flee from them, and you're moving when your opponent isn't. And anytime that you can do something when your opponent is standing still, I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's going to greatly affect the game. In addition to magic, that's why I gave up playing my dwarf army, because that's a whole phase of the game that I'm not taking part in. And if my opponent brings an army that's magic heavy and I have magic defense that's heavy, then that's great. But the fact that I can't participate in the magic phase to the full extent that my opponent can, I can dispel things that remain in play, can do those sorts of things, but not being able to participate in an entire phase of the game actively, this new mindset, this new theory that I just thought of, and it's not a new theory, I'm sure lots of other people thought about it, but it's just something that struck me when I was playing the Orc and Goblin army, because right away, I don't have scouts, but I did have Vanguard with the wolves, which was pretty helpful. I did have lots of compulsory stuff, which my opponent didn't, so I was able to do certain things. We both had magic, so I get to participate not only in my magic phase, but also in defensive magic on my phase if he had things that remained in play. And shooting. If you don't, I'm not saying you should go all out shooting, but if you have some shooting, in this case with this Empire army, I have a lot of shooting. Orc and Goblin army, I ended up switching out my Night Goblins with spears for Night Goblins with short bows, and then gave them a couple fanatics each also, which ended up helping greatly when I moved the pump wagons up, and they didn't they didn't make their charge, they didn't hit home, then the night goblins were there because those pump wagons were getting charged quite a bit. So the night goblins were there to release their fanatics just in front of those, and then you're taking 2 dice 6 strength 5 hits because you're probably going to stop on those fanatics. So again, in shooting, you want to be active. So I put in a bunch of bolt throwers, took my Savage Orcs down from 40, Savage Orc Biggins down from 40 down to 20, because like my Black Guard, you only really need the front rank to get into combat. I'm paying a lot of points for those extra ranks. So 20 was more than enough, and that got me 4 bolt throwers, which, is just another shooting thing. 4 bolt throwers, 2 doom divers. Those are pretty high effective, no armor save type stuff. So that's something else you want to be active in. You just don't want to sit by with no shooting, and because you're not active in that phase. Also, you want to be active in hand to hand, and also with that, I have the big hand-to-hand block for my Orcs and Goblin army was those Savage Orc Biggins with extra hand weapon. So they're frenzy. They're coming in at 3 attacks, weapon skill 4, strength 5, with a chopper on the first turn of combat. And you put the shaman in there, gives them a 5-up ward. Only a third of all things that go through, all attacks that wound go through, are going to be effective. So that's something else that you could be effective in hand-to-hand combat. Now this Empire army, it's not really effective in hand-to-hand combat, but the way I think that the meta, or whatever you want to call it, for this is to not die all the way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because to get the points for these swordsmen, if I understand the rules right, killing a detachment's not going to get you those points. You have to kill the detachment and you have to kill the parent unit to get all the points. So if I can just prevent that, that's a lot of guys that my opponent's going to have to go through to get there. And some people would say, well, I could sit back and foot a gork that all day long and blast you away, or send a vortex through and all those sorts of things. And absolutely, you can. But I'm hoping that, given the distance that it is and potential miscasts and my own magic phase, might see things a little bit differently. And so you want to be able to be effective in hand-to-hand, at least a little bit. Just at least, if nothing else, to not die. Like Skaven's good at that, right? They have combat guys that can come in and clean house and cast spells and buff their troops and that. But they also have, just hordes and hordes with leadership and lead from the back and all that kind of stuff. I don't even know all the stuff that they have. But so basically that was just my little rambling and epiphany, if you will, when I was thinking about my friend in basketball, how he picks for his fantasy league, and applying that to my Orc and Goblin army, that I kept thinking, man, if I can be effective in every phase of the game, maybe that would, help me, because I don't think I'm the best player in the world. I don't think I'm the worst. I've watched enough battle reports to have a strong feeling of what's going on. But yeah, if you can be active in every phase and every sub-phase of that phase, again, with scouting and Vanguard is good. Movement with the compulsory, your opponent can't flee. Just be active in that phase. Even if you only have one thing that can do that. Anytime that you're doing something when your opponent's not, that's got to have an end result of being good. Magic, you got to have some magic. Even if it's just one guy with a Dispel Scroll on Lore of Fire. I mean, you can always 6 dice the base Lore of Fire spell, which is always good for taking out chaff. So you're getting points that way. So just be active in it. Shooting, have some shooting, I would think. I see a lot of these Warriors of Chaos armies, and they come flying across the board they're just all about hand-to-hand. Very little magic, no shooting, all about hand-to-hand. And if you're in a points denial thing, or you have some kind of a choke point, it's really hard to get around three flying monsters, 2 Manticores and a Demon Prince. It's just tough to get around that. And I don't even know. I have a lot of cannons and a lot of high strength stuff and 2 level 4s, but even that, I mean, if you do one thing that's really, really good, maybe you could get away with running an army like that, and certainly there's enough things that are really, really good in that. Which leads me to this one. I was really toying around with, I love the Outriders. I don't have any. I like the old Outriders and Pistoliers, and they're just annoying as hell, but you can Vanguard with those, right? And you can also have your archers, you can have some scouts to to fiddle with deployment. I was actually toying with having a bunch of 10-man units of swordsmen just so that I could get 5 skirmishing archers as attachments, just to have 5 cheap guys that I can run up and redirect or double flee or whatever, so that my opponent doesn't see combat. Now, like I said, if I did have somebody who was chaos that was coming at me with this particular army, and again, this is just the first installment, it's just an idea, I don't even know if it's going to work, but the Lore of Beasts, if I can get that spell, I can't remember what it is, Curse of Anrihir maybe, it's where you treat all terrain as dangerous terrain and you fail on a 1 or a 2, no armor saves. That's a lot. So in my movement phase, I'll have my movement, I'll have my magic, I could cast that spell on 1 unit. If it goes through, then I'll shoot up the other unit, if he has 2 units of these things. And then I still got Amber Spear, and I have things that can affect combat. I wanted to make sure that once these crossbow units got into combat, they're probably going to be charged. Once they got into combat, then they have spells that can affect units that are in combat. So I can go Savage Beast Semi guys, give myself +1 strength, +1 toughness. I got the Hurricanum there. They're going to have hatred. I can cast spells on them to make their attacks magical with the Lore Metal. I mean, there's just things that I can do. I can affect my hand-to-hand with my magic phase. Again, I'm not counting on it too heavily. But so anyways, there you have it. We'll see how this goes. I'm very pleased with my Orc and Goblin army, the way that I can be active in every phase. And this is just the first installment of this one. And I just wanted to see some cool stuff on the table. And again, that chariot there is going to be used. So I got 2 of these videos now. Renato, I got to give him a call at 9:30. And yeah, so hopefully, if you think about this in a new way, it might be kind of cool. Like I said, everybody thinks about being active in every phase, but every sub phase is kind of important too. So that's it. This one's 12 minutes long, and I have enough rambling. And hopefully this was visually stimulating enough for you guys to stay with me for 12 minutes. All right, Rubicon out.